Yeah, it was very good with that Pashal.
Other
Obama
presidents
went there
had a
when he
bunch
was a
of support, yeah.
candidate.
Right.
You
I'd
know,
like to see what that
And
crystal
if you listen to the speech, he really, all they did was slam Obama. You know,
I didn't hear
right,
that.
we got all the last administration and
Aleph. Right, that's what we're going to start with tonight. It's a carbon ola. Carbon ola is what we call to be safon hamizbeach. The northern part morning, right, is no good. Now wait a second. Carbano. Why did I bring a carbon chatas? Because right, if I did it on purpose, there's no carbon, right? No carbon.
Verses that you can bring.
And there were certain there was one mizbeach, and there was a big surface. Correct.
At the northern.
That's correct. Okay.
So then, depending on the type of carbon or the type of animal,
Type of carbon.
the
type
you
of
would go to
carbon.
one of the four
So for
colors.
instance, the northern part of the Azara. Carbon chatas, carbon ola, there was no eating. The carbon ola was, they were still attached to the animal after the blood was. So the Kohanim were able to eat from that carbon chatas. Who ate from it? So look at the next column, right? The fourth column of the page. Lemi ne'achal l'zacharei ha'kohuna. Right? The male Kohanim were allowed to eat from the carbon chatas as opposed to their spouses or something like that. There were no female Kohanim, right? But as opposed to their spouses. In other words, only the men could eat of this sanctified meat, all right? And where would it
Children? I mean, like boys? Did you have
If
to
it
be
was-
an adult?
be? No, you could be a katan.
You could be a 7-year-old boy
How about a
or
non-Jewish oven? No, seriously, a
No.
non-Jewish oven.
No, could not.
Could not.
Could not. Now this is again because of the
Nature of
higher sanctity of this carbon, the kodshe kodashim, all right, and it had to be eaten within the azara, or when the Beis Hamikdash was built within the walls of the Beis Hamikdash, and as we said, the skin belonged to the
Cohen.
Kohen, right? To the Kohen. Okay. All right.
what is that
So
last column? Or
that's the last column, right? Or habehema, the skin of the animal goes la kohanim, with the exception of parim useirim hanisrafim, gam oram nisraf. There are the para aduma
I burned the whole thing.
was completely consumed, even the skin of the para aduma, right? Even the hide of the para aduma. I think the sa'ir la'azazit, the sa'ir which was offered as a korban on Yom Kippur was completely consumed.
Can't
I'm
eat
not
on
sure
Yom
about
Kippur,
that.
huh?
I'm not sure about that. Right, correct. Couldn't eat it on Yom Kippur. Okay, so that's Kodshe Kodashim. Okay, now what are we talking about? We were talking about the case of the carbon ola. Now what happened with the carbon ola? So you removed the horn of this carbon ola. Now, when did you remove the horn of the carbon ola?
Before they checked.
You removed the horn of the carbon ola either before it was shechted.
Oh,
I mean, that's not nice.
Are you allowed to do that? No,
Not nice to whom?
To pull the horn off the...
No, but it's okay.
Doesn't
to
hurt.
check that.
What? Doesn't?
No, you don't pull it. You slice it off. I don't think the animal. I don't think that that's.
I don't think it feels it. It's like,
Yeah.
because it's only like
Right.
cutting your nails,
Right.
isn't it?
When it cuts soft?
What?
I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So
not nice.
either you cut off the horn. Maybe that wasn't nice, right? You cut off the horn of the animal before the animal was shechted, or else you cut off the horn of the animal after the animal was shechted, but before the zrikas hadam was done. Remember, they would collect the dam, the blood, after when they would shecht the animal, they would collect the blood in a basin, and part of that blood was sprinkled. I know it's gross, right? Part of that blood was sprinkled. Murray's not happy. Was sprinkled, on the mizbeach. Part of the blood was actually poured, splashed on the mizbeach.
one of
So-
his clients.
Right? So this is, so what's the status of the horn before the animal, before the dam of the animal is, well, let's say, what's the status of the horn when this animal's walking around?
Belongs to the owner of the animal.
It belongs to the owner of the animal, that's correct, but what's the status of it? Is it holy? Is it not holy?
Nothing.
Well, no, the animal has already, the owner of the
Oh, it's
animal
already
has
been
already
designated.
designated this animal as a karban ola.
It can't be
Right.
holy, other than you couldn't, if it's holy, you couldn't take it.
Well, hold on a second. So let's change our terminology.
Okay.
Let's say the horn is
Good question.
consecrated. It's not
The animal's
yet.
been consecrated.
The animal has been consecrated, and if the animal is consecrated, along with the animal being consecrated, the horn is
Yeah,
consecrated.
the whole animal.
Right? The horn is consecrated. Okay. Now, or we can call it holy if you want. Right?
Okay.
It's holy. Now, once the animal has been shechted and the blood of the animal has been sprinkled, then it no longer, you can't take that horn anymore.
Right.
Because at that point, the horn belongs to the Kohen. So if you take it, it would be a question of stealing it. But if you cut it off before that point,
You cut it off before the blood or before
either
the
one, either one, either before the animal was shechted, you cut it off, it's still holy, but
Can you cut it off before you even consecrate it?
But you could
yes,
check.
but then there's no question about
No,
it.
no,
You
but
could
so
check
you,
the
so what my
event,
question was, that you can designate an animal whose horns have already been cut off.
It's
And
not
that's a good carbon.
It's not considered a moom.
It's
correct.
not a moon
It's not
or
considered
whatever.
a moom.
Okay,
Right.
fine. So you
Okay.
can do that.
Okay, but here we're talking about a situation where the animal was consecrated. It was designated as a carbon
Right.
ola. It hasn't yet been either shechted, or it's been shechted, but the blood hasn't yet been sprinkled, meaning that it's still, the horn still belongs to the owner.
Right.
What does the Gemara say about that case?
Why can't you do that?
So the Gemara says,
Didn't we say it's stealing from the Kohen? as opposed to
no,
stealing-
no, we never said it was stealing from the Kohen. It's only stealing from the Kohen if you cut it off after the blood was sprinkled. If you cut it off after the blood was sprinkled, it's stealing from the Kohen. There's nothing to talk about
But
there.
who's shechting the animal?
Either a Kohen or a regular
So
person
if the
could shecht
Kohen
it
is shechting this animal,
off, right?
the owner of the animal could still cut off these
Sure.
horns?
It doesn't. The
Right, Kohen
Kohen
runs
doesn't
over it.
belong to the Kohen until the blood
It's
has been
actually
sprinkled.
sprinkled.
Right. Okay. Because up until that point, it has the status of a consecrated animal, but not the status of a karban. Once the blood is sprinkled,
Then it's
it
a
now
karban.
has the status of a karban, and the horn and hide belong to the kohen. So our Gemara says, "Amar Rav Yehuda, b'shofar shel ola lo yitka." Right? You should not lichatchila blow a shofar that is of an ola.
From an animal that's been consecrated.
Correct. In the circumstances we've discussed,
Right.
you should not use that shofar to fulfill your obligation. V'im taka, but if you went ahead and did, in other words, you went ahead and used it and blew it on Rosh Hashanah, yotza, you have fulfilled your obligation. Right? So obviously, we have to ask the question of,
If you did it knowingly
Why?
or unknowingly.
well, you did
Either
it
way.
knowingly. You knew what you were
We
doing.
didn't do
Okay.
it.
You knew what you were doing. You did it knowingly, right? But maybe you didn't know it. Maybe you didn't know
But you weren't supposed
that
to.
you weren't supposed to.
What if you? And if
But you knew it was an old
But
one.
even if you knew you weren't supposed to and you did it anyway, you're yotze. In other words, if you asked the question, you say, "Can I do it?" We would tell you no. But
did
then
it
you say,
anyway.
yeah, and you go ahead and do it. Okay, you're yotze. You fulfilled your obligation. Okay.
That doesn't happen in many other circumstances.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Unusual that the Rabbanim
well,
let you do it.
it's
you know?
It says you can't do it, and if you,
You
do
can't
it,
do
that's
it, but
okay.
we'll let you get away with it. It's like you
It's
can't
a
do it. If you
lichatchila.
do it, we're gonna
You
make it
can't do
blow
it, but
three
if you
times.
do it, you get a mitzvah.
It's a
Exactly.
lechatchila to b'diavad. Okay. Okay.
You should tell it to my wife.
Some schools will take
You get a
You
bit.
get twice.
some schools will still take a check to the building fund, even if it's written on Shabbos.
Okay. All right. Let's go. All right.
If it's a
So,
big enough check, don't worry.
right, so
about it.
obvious,
Big enough checking, you write it on your gift.
The
right,
small,
so obviously,
if it's a small check, you wait till Sunday.
obviously, we need to understand why there's a change in licha. We understand why lichatchila you shouldn't do it, because this is a holy object, right? And you're using a holy object not for something holy. In other words, blowing the shofar.
Not holy?
No, it's not holy. It's a mitzvah, but it's not holy. Right? It's a mitzvah.
We spend all this time figuring out what can be a shofar, even though it doesn't matter.
No, it does matter.
The object itself doesn't
The
matter.
object itself is not holy. If I want to take a shofar into the bathroom
Okay.
and blow the shofar in the bathroom,
There's an echo
They're gonna take your
problem.
weight.
There's always going to be an echo in the bathroom.
There's issues with people
Depends where
doing that,
you
by
aim
the way. I don't want to say
No, it depends where you aim it.
Yeah.
kol hakavod. In other words, you can't take your tefillin into the bathroom. Your tefillin are holy,
Right.
but you can take a shofar into the bathroom.
Did you know that?
You can sing in the shower.
I mean, I wouldn't do it, but I didn't know it.
Okay,
Now you can bring it up there.
okay.
I want to do it.
So lichatchila, you should not do it. B'diavad, if you did it, it was good. Lichatchila, you shouldn't do it because it has a holy status to it. Not because it's a shofar, but because it's the horn of an animal that was designated as a carbon ola. And that you're not allowed to misuse that animal. In other words, once the animal has been designated as a carbon ola, you're not allowed to use that animal for anything other than a carbon.
Right.
So here you're using the horn of that animal for something other than a carbon. You're being the kind of mitzvah with it. So we understand why lechatchila lo yitka you shouldn't. What we don't understand yet is why ve'im taka, if you did do it, yotza, you fulfilled your why. Right? What's the big deal? If you did it, you shouldn't fulfill your obligation either, right? We'll have to figure out why that changes. Okay. So that's one case. That's called the shofar shel ola. The second case the Gemara gives us is the shofar shel shlamim. Right? What's the shofar shel shlamim? Now, what is a carbon shlamim? Right? So if you go back to the sheet, you'll see that a carbon shlamim is in a different category, and a carbon shlamim is called kadoshim kalim. Right? It's lighter. It's a lower level of kedusha, a lower level of kedusha than an ola. And that lower level of kedusha manifests itself in a number of ways. It manifests itself, number one, you can shecht it anywhere in the azara. It manifests itself that you have a longer time to eat
2 days
it,
and 1 night.
right? The 2 days and the night in between. It manifests itself in who can eat it. So, for instance, if you bring a carbon shlamim, or a carbon toda, certain parts of the animal have to go to the kohanim, the chazeh, the breast of the animal, right? The white meat of the animal, and the shok, the thigh of the animal, they go to the kohen, and the kohanim get to eat those. However, when it comes to the rest of the animal, any person can eat it. All right, so that's a lower level of kedusha than the kodshe kadashim. It can be eaten b'chol ha'ir Yerushalayim, anywhere in Yerushalayim, and it's eaten. Right, and the skin belongs to the owners who bring the carbon. In other words, they get the hide
Skin
back.
and the horns?
The skin and the horns belong. So
You can
there's
never steal, even if it's.
right, no.
You're never
right.
stealing. It doesn't matter, even if it's after they sprinkle,
So
because it's all.
So here, right here, what do we say about the horns of a carbon shlamim? Let's say you cut off the horn of a carbon shlamim. What's the deal? Says our Gemara,
Should be.
right? Says our Gemara, b'shofar shel shlamim lo yitka. Right?
You would think so.
You should not lo
But if
yitka.
you do,
Right?
you're low yotze.
Right? You should
making it
not. You should
You
not
shouldn't
blow
use it, okay.
Right? We would.
Because it's
We
still
would
be-
have.
well, it's still be
We would have
designated
thought.
carbon.
Right? We would have thought just the opposite. Right? It
Oh.
doesn't have the status of a carbon.
Right, but
ola,
either way, you shouldn't
right?
use it because
Ah,
you've designated.
But the idea is that it's designated as a carbon, so
It's the
lo
second half that
yitka.
doesn't make
V'im taka lo yatsa.
Yeah, that's the
Right?
problem. If you
And
did-
if
but
you
do it,
did,
okay.
lo yatsa. Now wait a second. This is bizarre.
Yes.
If you
That's
take the horn of a carbon ola,
More
and
holy.
right, which is a higher level of kedusha, you lichatchila you shouldn't use it, but b'di'evet if you did, you
Okay.
fulfilled your obligation. If you take the horn of a carbon shlami, which is lesser of a kedusha, lichatchila you shouldn't use it because after all it's still a carbon. B'di'evet if you did, you're not yotzei. The Gemara, that doesn't make sense. The Gemara is saying, what's going on here?
No?
Right? My taima, what's the reasoning for this? Why is the Gemara saying this? My
When do you give
taima.
shlamim, by the way?
What?
When would you give each of these
Shlomim.
shlamim and ola?
Shlamim would be a carbon toda, is an example
Toda.
of a shlamim,
Thank you.
right?
Thank you.
Some you could bring a carbon shlamim if you just wanted to. You wanted to bring a carbon, you could bring a carbon shlamim. You want to undergo the
You had a
experience.
baby and
Yeah.
Okay.
instead
So
of kiddush, you do something.
yeah, you
It's
want to
basically kiddush, 'cause
you want
everybody
to
can eat.
you want to sponsor kiddush. Okay.
And you get
So
shoes
says
and
the
a shuffle.
Gemara,
No,
right?
you
Says the
can't.
Gemara, what is going on here?
You can't use the shoe.
Says the Gemara, my taima, what is the reasoning?
Right.
My taima ola, right? So what's the reason by ola that if you did do it, you're yotze? So the Gemara answers to say, bas me'ilahi, that when it comes to the carbon ola, you apply the principle of me'ila. What is me'ila? Me'ila means you misappropriated an item that was sanctified. You misappropriate. You used it for something that was not its
Intended
designated purpose.
With intent, or the
What was
intent is irrelevant?
No, with intent to use it, but not necessarily with intent
To
to
misappropriate.
correct, to misappropriate it. Okay, so you went ahead and you blew the shofar. So the Gemara says you're yotze, but why are you yotze? The Gemara says you're yotze because
It was already a holy.
you're guilty of me'ila. Why does that make you yotze? So what the Gemara is suggesting is the minute that you appropriate this for a non-holy purpose, it's as if you've stolen it and it's no longer considered holy. Since since an ola is bas me'ila, since me'ila applies to status. If it's lost its status, so now when you're blowing the horn, what kind of horn are you blowing?
A regular horn.
A regular horn.
Just like
And
a
if you're blowing a regular horn,
You do anything
But
wrong.
why does it lose its sanctity?
because you've done me'ila, you have misappropriated it.
Is that an Avera?
So,
Yes.
So you're Mekayim the mitzvah and you're committing an Avera.
Hold on to that question. We're gonna
Look at,
Right.
hold on, look at
I'm-
the notes.
I mean, the answer is yes, right? That's the question which we're asking here,
I know.
right? That's the question that we're asking here, but we're not
Hey,
up to
that's
that
why,
question,
see?
right? We're not up to that question yet, okay? What we're saying right now is, what was the problem? Why could I not blow on the shofar lichatchila? Because it was holy. Now I've gone ahead and blown it to be mekayim the mitzvah, right? Meaning the minute that I blow it, I've misappropriated it. I've committed me'ilah. And when you commit me'ilah, the object upon which you commit me'ilah loses its status of kedusha. Now, you have to now compensate the Beis Hamikdash, right? You don't just walk away. You've stolen from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Which is not a good thing, right? But,
I've heard that before also.
right?
First hand? I mean, has he been
Well,
talking to you?
no, Jeff, as I go into deep sleep stuff.
Right? You've stolen from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. You've committed me'ilah. However, part of committing me'ilah means the object loses its kedusha. So when the object loses its kedusha, now what you're blowing is a regular horn. And if you're blowing a regular horn,
You get the mitzvah.
you've done the mitzvah. Okay. Now, what about carbon shlamim? So look at the Gemara. The Gemara says, "Kevan dema'al ba since you've done me'ila with this horn of the carbon ola, nafka la lechulin. It has now gone,
Ordinary.
it's changed from kodesh, from holy, to chulin, to a regular horn. Right? That's the result of doing me'ila. Shlamim, but when it comes to shlamim, dilav b'nei me'ila ninhu, right? Shlamim are kodesh, and if you misappropriate shlamim, you haven't committed me'ila. Right? If you misappropriate shlamim, you haven't committed me'ila. Me'ila is only in kodshei kodashim. It's only in the more holy sacrifices. It doesn't apply to the less holy sacrifices. It's delav b'nei me'ila ninhu, isurahu derachiv behu, v'lo nafke l'chulin. What happens? So you now blow this horn of shlamim. So the minute you blow the horn of shlamim, what kind of horn have you blown?
A whole.
A holy horn. You've blown the horn of a karban, and you haven't been yotze with the horn of a karban.
So if you take something that's the holiest and misappropriate it, it becomes ordinary.
It becomes
But if you
ordinary,
take something
and you
lesser,
and
I know
you,
you have to pay for it,
and
but
you
you
have
can
to
use
pay,
it.
right?
If you take something lesser holy and misappropriate it, you can't.
Correct. In other words, you haven't changed its status.
Unless there's
That's-
Which is again
That's the point.
contrary to what you would think. You
No.
would think the holiest things you touch, you can't.
No,
They're the holiest.
No, but you could make an argument and say the things that are holier are more likely to lose that. In other words, because it's so holy, if you misappropriate it, the slightest thing that you do wrong with it, it's going to lose its kedusha. Something that is not as holy, the kedusha is hardier, if you will, right? So you could reason it. You could reason it that way.
So if you
Okay.
take a para aduma, which is supposed to be burnt entirely, and it's cooking on the fire there, and you get hungry, and you say, hey, I'm gonna take a piece of this, because I'm hungry, and take a bite. You've now done the ila, because you lowered its status.
You've also ruined the power.
You wrote, well, that goes without saying.
You got a lot of people really angry at you.
But then you eat
So you're not
it,
yotze.
but it's okay to eat it, because you have lowered,
Right.
it's no longer meat.
No, it's not. It's not okay
Well, it's
to
not
eat it.
okay, but it's...
You have to make the bracha.
Get the bench.
And you have to
It's not okay to eat it.
You've another...
Right? You've eaten kodshim. Right? You've eaten
No.
kodshim.
But by taking it, you
By
Yes.
taking it, you've
Do you have to
reduced
bring a
it.
carbon if you do that?
You,
Yeah, got
Got
that.
that.
And then you can cut the horn off, and you can put it.
so let's look at shlam. Let's look at
It's a bad
shlam.
example, Kyle.
Right? It's let's look at, for instance, let's look at the bechor.
Right.
Right? If you look at it, says lemin ne'echal.
Right,
So the
habechor
carbon says
lekohanim.
habechor goes lekohanim.
Right.
So let's say you brought a bechor. Bechor was your firstborn animal. The firstborn animal has to be brought as a carbon. Who gets to eat the meat of that bechor? The kohanim. Let's say that while it was cooking, you decided you were going to make a sandwich.
Right.
All right. So what have you done? Right. You have violated. Right. You've stolen from the kohanim. You've eaten kodshim. You've stolen from the kohanim. Right. But you're not guilty of me'ila, because that item remained holy. Just because you ate it didn't make it less holy. It retained its kedusha, retained its level of kedusha. You've
Don't get the
violated.
mitzvah.
Because it's
Now everything makes sense, right? The horn of holy, or shlamim, when you blew on that horn, since his does not you interpret the point, does the you want to be like aren't
Is that the question? Is that until now it's mine? Okay, so I haven't
still
done it
mine,
myself.
right? So they shechted my animal,
Right.
and I cut off before they sprinkle the blood. I cut off the horn, and I blow my tekios,
Right. It's the
Right, I blow
blowing
my
of the
tekios,
tekios, that's
right?
the meal.
And right, so I've done me'ila. The Gemara says, but at what point have I done the me'ila? Do I do the me'ila before? Is the me'ila done when I go? Is that when the me'ila is done?
No.
Or is the me'ila done after
You
I
blow through the horn.
blow through the horn? Right.
Yeah.
So he said,
Very
right,
important.
right. So the Gemara says, right, maskif
blow
la
through it.
rava,
Anything?
emas ma'al. When does me'ila take place? Lebasar detaka, right? After you blow into the horn, right? You've already blown into the horn, right? And after you've blown into the horn, that's when it's me'ila. However, ki kataka, before you started, right, when you blew into it, right, before you
Only
were,
when the sound comes out the other end.
yeah, so it's like what happens as you're blowing into it, it's not me'ilah.
No, it's not me.
And if it's not me'ilah, then the horn doesn't go out l'chulin. It's considered holy.
Right, and you
And
can't blow in it.
how can you blow in it? So according to Rava, it should be
Everyone after.
right. According to Rava, it should be what? It should be lo yatsa. Ela amar Rava. Rava said echad zeh v'echad zeh lo yatsa. Rava says, listen, you got it wrong. Right? You got it wrong, Rebbe Yehuda. Rava says in both cases, both in the case of the Ola and in the case of the Shlamim, lichatchila, you should not use the horns. And b'diavad, if you did use the horns, in neither case have you been yotzei. That's Rava's opinion. Okay? And then Rava thought about it.
Change his mind.
Right? Then Rava thought about it and he changed his mind. Hadar Amar, Rava changed his mind and said, Echad zeh v'echad zeh yatsa. Right? He changed his mind and he said, you know what? I thought about it.
Both of them are good.
Both of them are fine. Right? So he went literally, right, 180
But the
degrees.
bottom line is he's not going to agree with Rabbi Yehuda.
Right, both. He's not going to
Doesn't matter. That's it.
right, but according,
the point of
but
it.
Rava said both of them are good.
I'm not
Both
gonna
of them are
want
good.
Ornery.
All right.
Contrary. I'm a contrarian.
Ooh, okay, both of them are good. So let me ask you the question: why?
How could they both?
How could they both be good? How did
Because in
Rava?
neither case, have
Right,
you-
what Rava said makes a lot of sense. Right, that you didn't do me'ilah until after you produced the sound. But while you were producing the sound, it was kodesh, and the sound shouldn't count. So that makes a lot of sense logically. So how does Rava now all of a sudden change his mind and say? Right, he changes his mind, and what does he say? Oh, that's
the
it.
white one's different. Right?
Right, changes his mind and says that you're Yotzei. Why? The Gemara tells us. He says, Rava introduces this principle. It's a very important principle. Mitzvos lav lehenos nitnu. Mitzvos are not given to derive hana'ah from them. All right? What does it mean, mitzvos lav lehenos nitnu? Okay? That what
All the mitzvahs?
all of the mitzvos. Right? In other words,
You don't get any benefit?
the purpose of a mitzvah is never to derive hana'ah from that mitzvah. What is hana'ah? Hana'ah is physical pleasure. Right? The purpose of a mitzvah is never to derive physical pleasure. The purpose of a mitzvah is to derive spiritual satisfaction, but not physical pleasure. Mitzvos lav lehenos nitnu. That's the case. So what does that mean? Mitzvos lav lehenos nitnu. So what is the prohibition of me'ilah? What's the prohibition? If you benefit from something which is kodshe kodashim.
Or inappropriate. Benefit in the wrong way.
Right. So if you benefit from something which is holy, that's me'ilah. Are you benefiting here?
You make a Mekayim the mitzvah of shofar.
That's not considered benefiting. That's exactly
Or
what.
not benefiting
Right,
physically.
Right. That's what Rava is saying. In other words, Rava is saying, when we say you benefit, you've created me'ilah, you've done me'ilah, it's when you benefit physically. Right? When you benefit physically. So let's say that it was very cold outside, and the Kohen shechted the animal, but before the Kohen could sprinkle the blood, right,
Skin and put it on yourself.
you put your hands inside the animal to stay warm. To skin the animal is not so practical,
Right.
but you put your hands inside the animal to stay warm.
Or
right?
even you put your hands over
Or
the
even you
bath.
put your hand-
Is that, are you allowed
right,
to do that? Warm
Right,
yourself up
so
on
that's
the bath?
that's considered
That's for sure.
hana,
Okay, yeah.
and that you're not allowed to do. Right, that's considered
How do you
hana.
avoid that?
Right,
You're standing next to the mizbeach, you get warm.
No, but if you're doing a mitzvah,
I'm bringing a carbon, it happens to be cold.
so if you're
I'm
doing
gonna stand by the mizbeach and stay
no,
warm.
so that's what we're saying. We're saying here that there's a difference between physical hana'ah and spiritual hana'ah. If you're doing a mitzvah,
Right.
even though there's maybe
So
physical
incidental
hana'ah
benefit, right.
that you get, since
not why you're doing it.
since you're doing it l'shem mitzvah,
Okay.
we only look at the spiritual satisfaction. We don't look at the physical.
So you can eat challah and you
If
don't gain any
it's
weight, right?
incidental,
For a mitzvah.
right? If the physical is incidental to the spiritual.
Correct. Okay. Right. So that's what Rava says. Rava's, and
That
we're gonna
explains the low
right.
yatzah, the yatzah for both of them, not the low yatzah.
that explains yatzah. Correct.
Right, but not low yatzah.
Well, lo yatzah. He said lo. Why did he say lo yatzah? Why did Rava
'Cause you
originally
haven't
say
been me'ila
lo
yet.
yatzah? So he said yeah, because it's in both cases you're blowing a holy horn,
Right.
right? That initially Rav Yehuda said the horn that you're blowing by the ola isn't holy anymore because you did me'ila.
Right.
Rava comes along and says no, they're both holy still.
Right.
So if they're both holy and you've blown it, you're not yotze with either one.
And now he's
Then
saying
Rava
both
says,
of them-
but you know what? Upon second thought,
they're both holy, but you're
right?
not
They're both
violating
holy, but
anything.
you're not violating any. You're not doing anything wrong
Right.
because you're doing a mitzvah. You're not benefiting from
So that's
kachim.
not me'ila.
There's a prohibition from. There's a prohibition. There's a
So if
prohibition
that's
of.
not- right.
In other words, only by the carbon ola is it me'ila. By shlomim, it's not.
But so it's not me'ila anymore.
So it's not me'ila by the ola, and
So
it's
it's still
not
holy.
benefiting by.
So how can you be yatzah?
Because it's not
Still
a mitzvah.
holy.
It's no longer a mitzvah haba ba'avera. In other words,
Okay,
you're not doing anything wrong. You
So
can
you
use
blow
a holy.
shofar.
You can
You
blow.
can blow
If
a
you
holy part.
lichatchila, you shouldn't do it.
Right.
But if you did it, you were yotze. Why? Because you haven't illegally benefited. You haven't benefited from kachim, because by blowing the shofar, that's not considered benefiting.
Okay.
Right? If you would use the shofar, I'm trying to think, how could you use the shofar to physically... Oh, I got it, okay? You're hard of hearing.
Yeah, so you put
Okay.
it, just think,
Right?
you put it by your
Right?
ear.
So
and
you
it's
put
like
it
a
by your
phone.
ear, right?
And
You
it's-
put it by
it's,
your
I
ear,
knew it was
and
megaphone or
now
whatever.
you can hear what your wife is saying to you. So that's hana, right? Right?
Not in
That's-
my house.
Right? That's hana. So if that's
Making
hana,
something right.
so
I know.
right, so now you
Probably watching it
right
here.
now you've misappropriated, right? You've misappropriated kachim because you've physically benefited from the kachim, but using it for a mitzvah is not considered physically benefiting because mitzvos lav lehenos nitenu, meaning that when you perform a mitzvah, it's not considered a physical benefit. Like that.
So let's say somebody steals a lulav and esrog. Okay. We know that if they use it, it's not good.
Right.
But
Right.
what if they give it to their neighbor, who's in shul, seeing him using it, and say, "Can I borrow it for a minute to use it?" He's getting the mitzvah done spiritually, but he's using stolen property. But he doesn't know it's stolen property. Would the second person be okay based upon what you're saying?
Good question.
He's
No, it's still
fulfilling the
stolen
mitzvah.
property.
He's fulfilling the mitzvah.
He
with
says, I brought my
No, no,
lulav
no,
and
it's
esrog
still
He's
home."
fulfilling the mitzvah with stolen property, but
But
he doesn't know.
it's
It
stolen.
doesn't matter.
Still stolen.
It doesn't matter. It's still stolen.
Yeah,
That doesn't
so
matter.
here's
That's
the
not
same
what's
thing.
happening
If they're
here,
using
no.
a shofar that really shouldn't be used as a shofar, and the person hearing it, he's saying it's okay.
No,
But it's
so
not-
so there's two things here.
No one's
Okay,
gonna
there's
benefit in Mike's
there's two things, right? There's
No,
two
I
things.
know.
One is one concept is mitzvah haba ba'avera, right? Where you fulfill a mitzvah by doing an avera.
When you knowingly know that you stole it.
No,
No,
so
knowing-
no, it
No,
doesn't
it's
matter.
not matter.
It gives the
It
law
doesn't matter.
Dominic.
You
It's not
fulfill
ignorance.
you
can't
fulfill
change
the
status of
mitzvah.
property. If it's stolen,
You
don't
fulfill the
transfer anything
mitzvah,
but what you have.
Right, you fulfill the mitzvah by doing an avera. Okay. So in the case where you steal the lulav and
Well, you steal the
esrog,
shofar and then you blow
right,
it.
No,
and
wait,
you shake it, it's a mitzvah haba ba'avera. Now you give it to somebody
Who
else,
does not know it's stolen.
But still, the only way that he can fulfill that mitzvah is by using this stolen object, even though he doesn't know.
The second person doesn't know.
Even though he doesn't know.
So he's not getting physical pleasure out of it. He's just.
It's not a question of
fulfilling
pleasure. There's
No, it's
no
not a question of
pleasure.
knowledge.
It's no longer.
Mitzvah
No, no,
haba ba'aveira is not a question of pleasure.
That I
No,
agree.
no.
The initial person, but the second. person,
Anybody. It's not,
yeah.
in other words,
Even if they don't know.
mitzvah haba ba'aveira is not a function of whether you derive pleasure from it.
So with this chauffeur, it's the same thing. They're hearing the sound, and yet he's saying that it's okay.
No, because they haven't done anything wrong. It's not stealing.
Right.
Because stealing of kodshim is defined as getting pleasure from them. That's how you steal.
Not spiritual.
That's how you steal from holy. You steal from holy by using it for something pleasurable. That's not holy.
So
That's
why
how you
didn't we just say that in the first place? Rabbi Yehuda comes along and he says, if you use the Ola,
Yehuda disagrees.
about which part?
Mitzvos lav lehenos nidnu.
He doesn't follow that.
He doesn't follow that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so back to the Gemara now. So the Gemara, we're going to come back to this concept of mitzvos lav lehenos nidnu,
Next.
but the Gemara, what the Gemara is going to do is the Gemara is now going to focus on some other examples of mitzvos, of shofar. So other examples of shofar. Okay, the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, this is, whether it's the same Rav Yehuda or whether it's somebody saying the name of Rav Yehuda, B'shofar shel avodah zara lo yitka, right? Lo yitaka, you shouldn't blow a shofar of avodah zara. A shofar of avodah zara, meaning a shofar that was used for avodah zara, right? Not the
It's a
shofar
ritual.
of an animal that was used, that was shechted the shem avodah zara. We're not talking about that. We're talking of something where the horn itself was used
Blow the horn as part of our ritual.
as part of the avodah zara. Correct. So lo yitaka, you shouldn't. Ve'im taka, but if you did, what do we say? Yotza. Right, but if
Why
we did,
shouldn't you use
yotze. Because what's the prohibition when it comes to an item of avodah zara?
Benefit.
The prohibition is deriving benefit. We're not allowed to derive benefit from an object of avodah
And
zara.
again, it's a physical.
But it's a
benefit.
mitzvah. Right, and when it comes to doing a mitzvah, so lichatchila you shouldn't do it because it's pasnish.
Right.
It's not nice.
It's not the right way to go about it.
Pasnish, not nice.
Right.
Okay.
It's not nice.
Right, so you shouldn't lichatchila do it. But if you went ahead and did it, you haven't derived any benefit from it. Because the only benefit you've derived is spiritual benefit, and spiritual benefit doesn't count. Right, so it says if you haven't derived any benefit
Principle.
from this horn of avodah zara, so that's why we say, right, v'im taka, that if you did blow on a horn of avodah zara, yotza. B'shofar shel ir hanidachas. What about a shofar shel an ir hanidachas? What's an ir hanidachas? Ir hanidachas is a city in which the majority of the inhabitants of that city have worshipped avodah zara. So what do you do to the city?
Destroyed.
The city gets completely destroyed. And anything which is in the city is completely burnt to the ground. Right? People who worship the avodah zara are killed, and everything in the city is demolished. The city itself is burnt to the ground. Right? Burnt to the ground. So now you're using...
This is Jews in the city.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Jews who subverted.
Tel Aviv goes first.
Right? So what happens? So now you're using the horn of an animal from an ir hanidachas. What's the halacha about the animal from the ir hanidachas? It's supposed to be completely burned. It's supposed to be completely destroyed. If that's the case, since it's supposed to be completely destroyed, we consider it halachically as if it is already destroyed. In other words, once it has the status, once the Beis Din says this is an ir hanidachas, then that animal doesn't exist anymore. Even though you see it walking around, it halachically doesn't exist anymore. It's considered already halachically ashes. So what's the problem? So now there's no shear. There's no shear.
You didn't really
Right.
hear that sound that
Right.
came out of it,
Right, the shear. No, you might have heard the sound, but
But
you
it has
didn't use a
no
kosher.
meaning, right, yeah,
You didn't
yeah.
use a kosher shofar because the
Right.
shofar doesn't have a shear. The shofar doesn't exist halakhically. So it doesn't have a shear, it doesn't have the required size, and therefore whatever you've heard comes from a puzzle shofar.
So you brought it to the Beit HaMikdash for a korban.
You
It doesn't
can't.
exist either.
It doesn't exist.
Right.
Can't.
So you don't get the mitzvah.
Okay.
That's what it is, though. The rationale is the size because it's.
Yeah, that's what it says. B'shofar shel ir hanidachas lo yitaka ve'im taka lo yatsa. My timer. What's the reason? Ir hanidachas, because anything that is part of the ir hanidachas, kisuse michtas shiure. It's considered as if its shear doesn't exist, meaning that once it's been declared part of the ir hanidachas, we halachically consider it as if it is already destroyed.
Non-existent.
Okay. So Amar Rava. Okay, Rava is now going to take us on a little bit of a tangent. All right, but more within this category of mitzvos lav lehenos ninu. We're going to get here into an interesting concept of hamoder hana'a mechavero. In other words, what happens? I take a neder. Now we know what a neder is, right? A neder is an oath that you've stated according to the proper format. You've stated the oath with using, right, invoking the proper format for an oath. And what was this oath that you've taken? You've said, I am not going to derive any hana. I'm not going to allow myself to derive any hana from Ruvain. Now, what happens? Ruvain is the guy who blows shofar in shul.
You got a
Right?
problem?
So, do you have a problem or not?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a problem or not? Right? You took an oath, right? That you're not going to derive any
Not if Hanoah
benefit
is a physical
from
benefit.
any. You're not going to get any benefit from anything that Ruvain does, right? So, Ruvain's going to blow the shofar for you. So, have you fulfilled your obligation? Says Rava, Amar Rava Labriut, Amar Rava Hamoder Hana Mechavero, Mutar Liskoa Lo Tkiyah Shal Mitzvah. What can he do? He's allowed to blow the shofar for you. Why? Wait a second.
Mitzvah.
Why? Because it's a mitzvah. And mitzvos, as Rava says, lav lehenos nitnu. There's no hana associated with a mitzvah, so you haven't violated your oath. What about hamoder hana'a mishofar? Let's say you say, you know what? I'm taking an oath that I will never derive benefit from this shofar,
From a particular shofar.
from this shofar right here. I will never derive benefit from this shofar.
But the mitzvah is the benefit, isn't it?
No,
it's
that's what we're
not.
saying.
That's
It's
the bottom
that's
line.
not
Mitzvah,
considered
so you're not
a
getting the
benefit.
benefit.
Says Rava, mutar
don't?
liskoa bo tkiyah shal mitzvah. That what? You can blow that shofar on Rosh Hashanah, even though you say I'm never gonna derive. I take an oath that I'm not going to derive benefit from the shofar. You could still use it for a mitzvah because mitzvos lav lehenos nitnu, as Rava says. Mitzvos do not give you the kind of benefit that would cause you to violate your oath.
Now, is the thinking on that the mitzvahs for Hashem's benefit, this is why if we're doing something that Hashem gets pleasure from, that Hashem has told us to do, that if there's, if we have these types of circumstances.
Is that the rationale for
I just
mitzvos lav lehenos
Yes.
nitnu?
Yeah.
I think if I can maybe rephrase it a little bit, or maybe this is what you're saying, that mitzvos are spiritual acts. And because they are spiritual acts, maybe that's what you mean by saying they're indicative of your fulfillment of Hashem's will. They're spiritual acts. And since they're spiritual acts, we define them as spiritual acts and not as physical acts. And even though they might be physical. I mean,
You have to perform
blowing the
them
shofar
physically.
is a physical act. But nevertheless, we do not consider it to be physically beneficial to you. It's spiritually beneficial to you, but not physically. Now, but we're going to see some other examples of this right now, okay? Amar Rava, and Rava is going to now give us some other examples that go beyond shofar. Rava says, Hamoder hana'a mechavero. Right? There's this one particular Kohen in the Beis HaMikdash that you took an oath and you said, I will never derive any benefit from this guy. From Reuven the Kohen, I will not derive any benefit from him. Now, I become Tameh, and I need to have the water and ashes of the para aduma sprinkled on me. So let's just back up for a second. Okay? We know that there are various kinds of tuma. The worst kind of tuma, the most restrictive kind of tuma, is Tame Mace. If you come in contact with a dead body, or if you are in proximity to a dead body, either within Dalit Amos or within the same room as a dead body, right, within Ohel, so you become Tame. That's called Tumas Mace. How do you get out of Tumas Mace? How do you become Tahor again? Only through the Para Aduma, only through the ashes of this red cow that was completely burned, and the ashes were mixed with water that was trapped, rainwater that was gathered, right? Mayim Chayim it's called, and that was sprinkled on you. Sprinkled on you the third day, was sprinkled on you on the sixth day, the seventh day you went to the mikveh, and that's how you became Tahor. Okay, now, once you became Tahor, so you were allowed to go up to Har Habayis, and you were allowed to walk in the holy areas, right? Obviously, there was a limit, but you were allowed to walk in certain holy areas. Today, we can become Tahor from certain kinds of Tumah, right? But we cannot become Tahor from Tumas Mace. We're all Tameh from Tumas Mace. Why? Because there's no Paraduma. Right? Since there's no Paraduma, we're all Tameh Tumas Mace. What will happen in Yirtz Hashem, the third base of Mikdash, we will have the Paraduma. We've had 9 Paraduma become Tahor from Tumas Mace. So now, I became Tameh, Tumas Mace. And Ruvain the Kohen is about to sprinkle the water and ashes of the Paraduma on me. Says the Gemara, Ve'amarava hamoder hana'a mechevero maze alav mechatas biyamos hagshamim avalo biyamos hachama. What do we say? We say that Ruvain the Kohen can sprinkle the waters of the Para Aduma on me, biyamos hagshamim.
The rainy season.
Right? In the rainy season, but not biyamos hachama. Not in the summer season when it's not when it's not raining. Why? What's the issue?
Because the rainwater is
The issue, right? The issue is when he sprinkles the water on me at a time when it is hot outside. There are 2 components to what's happening. Component number 1 is
you get cooled off by
Spiritual.
component number 1 is spiritual benefit. But component number 2 is
A nice hot
a
shower.
physical
Sorry,
benefit.
blood.
Yeah,
Right?
really, a bloody bath. I mean, a bloody.
No, it's what blood? It's no
Oh,
blood.
the Paraduma, it's the ash and
There's no blood. It's ashes. It's only a little bit of ashes and a lot of water, right? So the water, like you ever put a spritz bottle, you spritz yourself when it gets. The kids do it all the time. I put a fan on the end. They spritz themselves, right? It's cooling. So in the time if it's really hot, so Ruvain the Kohen isn't allowed to sprinkle this water on you, right? Another
What if
Kohen.
it's a cool day, like today? It's a May day.
No, that's what he means when they say b'yemos hagshamim. They don't mean actual only rainy days. They
cool
mean in the
days.
season of yemos hagshamim, which is winter in Israel, which is cooler. In other words, where the water being sprinkled on you is not giving you physical pleasure.
Right.
But if you're hot, right? It's July in Israel, and you go to the Beis Hamikdash, and Ruvain the Kohen is about to sprinkle the water on you. You have to say nope. I took an oath that I'm not allowed to derive any benefit from you. Send over Shimon the Kohen, right? And I'll let Shimon, right? Let Shimon the Kohen do it for me. Okay, so that's Hana. Here it gives another example. Hamoda Hana mima'ayan. Let's say that I take an oath. I'm not going to derive any benefit from this spring, right? This natural spring, which could serve as a mikveh, but I'm not going to derive any benefit from it. Why a person would take such an oath is irrelevant to us, but you did take such an oath. Tovel bo tevila shal mitzvah b'yamos hagshamim. In the winter, geg is into hate, you can tovel in it to become tahor, no problem. However, aval lo b'yamos hachama. But in the yamos hachama, in the time when it's really hot outside, you're not allowed to tovel in this mikveh. Why? Because not only are you getting a spiritual benefit of becoming tahor, but you're also getting a subsidiary physical benefit of being cooled off through the ma'ayan. Okay. We'll stop here because this is going to take us into the next topic, which is an interesting topic. The next topic is somebody forces you to eat matzah on Pesach. Right? They literally force it.
Definition.
They literally force it down your throat. Right? They force it down your throat. Have you fulfilled the mitzvah or not?
Yeah.
So, Mirz Hashem, we'll talk about that.
Are we having more class?
So, yeah, what's the
So
story?
next week,
Next week is Memorial Day.
Memorial Day, no class next week.
Then it's June 5th.
Well, yeah, Shavuos and then-
So June 5th is after Shavuos. That's the next.
June 5th is
2
after
weeks from today.
Shavuos.
I mean, do we want to make a
If we want to make a siyum, should we make the siyum